Hello, it's time for another episode of Discipleship today. My name is Bob Benson. I pastor Christ Lutheran Church in Bemis Point. We've been working through the scriptures, looking at different scriptures that really encourage us to be disciplers and encourage us to be being discipled. We finished the book of 2 Timothy, and we're going to keep going. We're going to go into the book of Titus. I'm just going to do an introduction today. Titus was a pastoral letter written from Paul to Titus, this guy that was taking over as the pastor, the shepherd, the leader of a church. And it was intended to offer encouragement and wisdom as Titus endured ongoing opposition from the ungodly and from legalists within his own congregation. Now, most of the time, we get thinking that our opposition comes from outside of the church. But there are times when there's opposition from inside the church. Paul instructed Titus to complete his assigned job of establishing overseers, or what we would call today elders, for the churches under his care. So it appears that Titus was an overseer, was the pastor, as we call it today, over a couple of different congregations. And he was setting leadership in place because he had personal relationships with these people. He described what sort of people these leaders ought to be. And I think that still stands for us today, that there's a characterization of good, godly leadership within the church. And then he talked about how all believers should live in relation to one another, as well as their interactions with non-believers. Proper Christian behavior is based on the fact that the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation to all people. We are all saved by faith through grace alone, not of works, lest any man should boast, right? So because we're saved, we act in a certain way. It's not we act in a certain way to get saved. Therefore, those who believe in Christ are to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives. True salvation changes us from the inside out. It's that transformation that Paul talks about in Romans, that metamorpho, and we think of that word as we think of a caterpillar to a butterfly. That's really what should happen to us. As they wait for his return, we are supposed to live this kind of life in anticipation of Jesus Christ's return to this earth. We think that Paul probably wrote this letter in the 60s AD, and really it is an encouragement to those of us that lead others, specifically written towards pastors. But each one of us has a role in pastoral ministry. That's my encouragement for you today. Pastoral ministry just doesn't belong to the pastor. If somebody needs a visit, go visit them. If somebody needs encouragement, encourage them. If somebody's grieving, grieve with them. That's the encouragement that we get from one another as we walk in this life together. We're going to face hard things, and it's a lot easier to face those hard things within the context of a congregation that comes together and loves one another. That's the ultimate command, that we love one another the way Christ loved us. So for discipleship today, this is our introduction to Timothy. Go out, make disciples, and be disciples.